housing construction historically has increased, and then do they expect both of those boxes? Next, student enrollment. Do they believe that student enrollment has increased? Yes, they believe that. You could see there was a concerted effort back to get that 14 points, 7. So the narrative, historical narrative, will believe. This is where, do they believe the district currently has an, you can see we are back where we were. And part of it is the bond was the focus. Then capital 11 focus. The bond got set aside. It wasn't discussed. And so does the community think the district has adequate space? 39% say yes, 36% say no, 25% say I have no idea. So as you talk about potential bond referendum, the discussion has to focus, because right now for the folks, it's the solution seeking a problem. They know that the kids are there and that it has increased. They don't understand how the actual space is being used and how it is being impacted by that growth.
On the 2024 numbers, is that the fall of 2024? Or
that was the spring of 2024.
okay. You opened with the fall.
Is there a correlation between the previous slide? Like it looked like somehow the district was messaging that there's more students, and at the same time the community started to understand that there's a need for space.
That was part of the discussion in 22.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the concerted effort in communication, because we saw that, okay, they need to know, they have more understanding on how student enrollment has increased, but then how it has been impacted on the spaces. Comparable spaces. First off, how important is it to ensure comparable spaces between school buildings? You don't have to convince anybody on this. 8 out of 10 people believe it's either very or somewhat important. The challenge is the next part. Do they think there are comparable spaces between school buildings in the district? 61% say yes. So once again, you're a half step there. Some districts have to go back and tell people why comparable spaces are important. You don't have to do that, but you have to talk about and show them where there are deficiencies with comparable spaces for students across the district. If the district asks for a property tax increase, are they for all, against all, or are they persuadable? The dead even tie. 26% are for all, 26% are against all. So it will come out to the persuadable and how they break on this. If they hear the district was asking for a property tax increase for a bond referendum for middle schools, and it was specific on middle schools, what's the dollar amount? 28% say nothing. I always want that number under 35%. So we're below that. 28% say $10 a month. 20% say $26 a month. And then we have 14% that say $30 or more. So at the outset, the typical resident comes in roughly about 18 bucks. Just call it about $200 a year at the outset. It's obviously the most important thing is the specifics of what's being asked for. So what we tested first, well, actually we rotated this. So half the sample got the classroom addition bond referendum, half the sample got the construction of the 4th middle school. So there's no positional bias. On the $139 million classroom addition bond referendum, and residents were told the owner of a $500,000 home would see an $18 a month tax increase. 56% support, 34% oppose, 11% are unsure. If we look at intensity, it's 12% to 10%. It's statistical tie on the intense position. And so what kind of surprised me in this is it kind of lines up with where people are at for dollar amount, but we don't have north of 60% support at the outset. And I think part of it harkens back to they don't understand the need. Because we are in, right now, the environment we're in is people will support have-to-haves. They're not willing to support nice-to-haves. And so right now, it looks like a solution seeking a problem. And it kind of comes out on this one, the reason for their position, 29% education's important. That's wonderful, but that doesn't get people to the polls on election day. Cost is reasonable. Same thing. Nobody wakes up and says, I have to go vote because the cost is reasonable. They'll get up and vote because my kids are in the school, and they will absolutely get out to vote if it's needed. Need has to be the number one reason for a bond referendum. On the flip side, no children, taxes too high, cost too high. 5% said it wasn't needed. Now, 3% said I would really want to build a new school. So when we test the new school, $205 million middle school, and residents were told it would be $30 a month on a $500,000 home. 40% support that. 57% oppose. And if we look at intensity, it's 3-to-1 strong opposition to strong support. What's the reason? The cost is too high. If we look at, you have 10%, it's a consistent 10% saying I'm supporting because it's needed. But on this one, it is the cost and the tax is too high, come in with a third of the community indicating that's why they would oppose. Now, you mentioned earlier looking at taxes and prioritization. This is a perfect example. We tested some other items, got away from the middle school question, and went through and just simply asked, would you support a property tax increase for these purposes? Not surprising, they lead the list everywhere across the state. Facilities maintenance and safety and security, 76 and 75. And people would support more for that at that level. Then we drop down to desk and furniture, EL and preschool space, new office space, high school athletic facilities at 59%. That actually surprised me that there was a portion of sports that we had a majority support. Then we get down to, and sometimes people, especially the athletic association, get mad when I talk about this, it's a prioritization of needs versus wants. And no matter what, if you put the classroom versus sports, you're going to have this division. Even if you look at Wyzetta's proposal that just came out, that was based on the survey. One question for the big referendum, and then they had to pull out the pool. Because if the pool was in the main question, it would potentially fail, even though it's about 10% of the total cost. So the performing arts space at the middle school, 5146. Alternative high school space, 5043. High school stadiums, 4851. And a dome at South High School, 3957. Hearing all of those components, would they support?
So we just asked questions about bonds, not about operating levy increases then.
We asked, we followed up on the construction of the new middle school with supporters and asked, would you, because you're going to need money if you want, they're willing to invest for a new middle school. The problem is there's not enough support in the whole community. So where do folks land on these other components? 30% say nothing, 29% say $8, 24% say $16, 13% say $24. So on this one, it comes in at about $12 a month. But obviously that $12 a month, if you had safety and security deferred maintenance, they're going to support more. If it was focused on athletics, it would be much less than the $12 a month. And we asked this question in 2022, and we asked it again, because there's this narrative when you have all these needs of let's just do it all at once. And it sounds great, but in the climate we're in with taxes, this is the result that we get. What does the community think? Ask for everything now and be done, or ask as needed? It is unchanged from 2022. It was 31% said ask for all in 2022. This time 32%, 61% said as needed. And then finally, where are folks getting their information? Very diverse communication preference. Email 20, 19% the website, 17% newsletter. Normally, though, it's interesting, we don't normally get double digits actually saying they prefer to receive their information from other people. And 10% saying social media is actually high. Most people don't want to admit that they really get a lot of information from social media, even though we all do. But you don't want to tell somebody interviewing you on the phone and then the newspaper. So at the end of the day, with the atmospherics in the district, and the first part of the survey, kind of a check-in post your November renewal, things look really good. You do not have the typical regression that we see after a successful or unsuccessful referendum. The financial part of it is it was a renewal. It's not under the spotlight like a property tax increase. The financial situation of the household, of the households across the district is moving in the right direction. It's not the macro issue it was 2 or 3 years ago. The property tax issue is the issue, and you're not unique everywhere across the state of Minnesota right now, and that will determine people's appetite and their capacity to pay. Just because they don't support a property tax increase for these purposes doesn't mean they don't care, okay? There are a lot of people out there that would support. They can't afford it at this point in time. So I'd be happy to answer questions.
Yes, so your opinion, what do you think trumps what? And I'll explain what I mean. It looks like 64 to 76% of people would be willing to look at facility maintenance, safety, and furniture in that order. And then there is some reservation about tax dollars. And so what do you think trumps? Do you think the slot or the information you got on caution trumps people wanting and agreeing to facility, safety, and furniture, or do you think agreeing to this trumps tax?
That the list of components shows you those higher supported ones people will say will support more for those items. But where we're at, in 2017, Richfield did a bond referendum. And it came in and did a survey just like this, and they had like 15 components like you had. And on their survey back then, the tax tolerance was about $10 a month. But we went through, and those facilities hadn't been updated in 50 years. I think the lowest level of support for a property tax increase was about 68, 69%, going all the way up to 90%. So the district looked at that and went all in and put out a question at $27 a month, 3 times the dollar amount. But because each component was so highly supported, it passed 65-35. Okay? People are still willing to go more, but they're being constrained. 2 to 3 years ago, the constraint was the economy. Now the constraint is property taxes. And it is also not knowing what the cities and counties are going to do next year. and the year after that. They're not counting on the consistency. So on safety and security, if the tolerance comes in at about $10 a month, they probably go to 15 or 20. They wouldn't go to 25 or 30 like they would have historically. Even that's been constrained right now because of taxes.
I have a question for you, and it might be a question. I guess my concern looking at some of this data is college middle school issue as well as whether or not they would vote. What kind of runway?
I mean, it varies on how aggressive. You know, like I said, the good news is you're part of the way there. You don't have to convince them that enrollment has been increasing. You don't have to convince them that housing is going to continue to increase. So it really is lining up for them to understand truly how enrollment has impacted the space and why the middle school is at the place at. And that's where the primary need is. Traditionally, I mean, the runway, you know, it can be a couple months, it can be a year. You know, this was queued up back in 2022, 21, 22, the discussion was there. So it's not like you're starting from scratch, in essence, with that. And you're going back to the community and talking about this is the priority now. Whether it can be turned around by the spring, you're going to have to cut through, and you're going to have to move very quickly in order to establish that.
Related to that, in your opinion, what are our odds of passing a referendum on middle school additions, and do you recommend going for that?
The spring is a challenge. The fall is a challenge. Every election's a challenge.
Yeah.
How's that for a cop-out? No, in all seriousness, I mean, there are challenges with spring referendums regardless of the survey result. What we have been seeing, if you look at the data, May is the worst time to go right now. That used to not be the case. May used to be preferred. It actually turns out April is a bit better, just looking at past failure over the last 6-7 years.
So that's like, why is that us doing April?
Yeah. August is never, ever, ever. November is going to be difficult because it might be an interesting election with the governor's race and the Senate race and everything else. That is the challenge of November, is getting through the clutter and communicating. The challenge, though, with spring is turnout. And even with April, everybody gets stir crazy in Minnesota. The minute the sun's out, they don't want to canvass. They don't want to get out the vote. They don't want to do any of that. They want to make their summer lake plan. And the turnout has just been abysmal among parents in spring elections. So districts have to do a really concerted effort in order to get those parents to the polls, because young parents have shown for the last 12 years, if there's a reason not to vote, they won't vote. They'll take the kid to baseball, hockey, dance, what have you. That's the priority for young parents nowadays. So, I mean, that's the challenge of 2026 in a nutshell. It's really, it's picking and going all in on a time that there's not one that's going to be optimal. You know, and now I'm really starting to wonder the whole November, because of what the cities and counties, that September timeline for the preliminary tax estimate, like St. Paul School District, those residents knew that their taxes were going up 25%. I was very worried about that one, but they came through and even in light of a 25% tax increase from the city and county, they overcame it. There were some districts that could not overcome that. So going in the spring, you move away from that. That's not part of the mix as much.
And was it the one slide where you said it's like a 50, it's kind of like a,
Yeah.
if it would pass?
Yeah, it really is a coin flip.
I'd say thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
One quick question. You said that all of that additional information would be in your final report. When can the board expect the final report?
Like to say before Christmas. Maybe. I'll do is because we're only 2 weeks from Christmas now.
I don't think it's a big deal.
Yeah, the report will kind of dive in. We'll look at the demographic breakdown, support, opposition, all of those sorts of things. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all.
Holmgren, we're going to move on to truth, taxation.
Sorry, Bill, nobody wants to stay here. Listen to you.
Okay.
Wow, Bill.
Everybody's very excited.
I'd
I
be
see.
feeling a little self-conscious right now.
The room's clearing out, Bill.
Well, this
a
tends to
fun
be a little
stuff.
dry.
Yeah.
The numbers part.
Okay, anyway, Chair Swanson, members of the school board, Superintendent Baldwin. Each year, we need to present a public hearing for our taxes for the next year. And then after that, you'll be able to certify the levy for this. It has to happen between November 25th and December 30th at least 6 p.m. or later. It certainly can be part of a school board meeting, which is what we are doing this evening, but we need to stop and allow for comments at the end of the meeting. And then we can allow for the final levy. Things we had to talk about is, first of all, the current year budget, and of course, the proposed property tax levy. So we're going to take a little bit of time, talk about some background information, then talk about this year's budget briefly, and then, of course, talk about the levy, get into some of the details of levy, and then have the public comment. It's important to note that the legislature sets funding for Minnesota schools. The numbers we're going to talk about tonight aren't something that I came up with, not something that Superintendent Baumann came up with. These limits all come from the state of Minnesota. The way that they choose to fund schools is by taxation. This is always important just to take a look at. Funding is not keeping up with inflation, and you can see the blue line is the inflation line. Of course, the dotted line is what we actually have received from the state of Minnesota. You see the last couple of years, you see a couple of little small blips where we got some bigger increases from the state of Minnesota, but inflation has by far outrun that. If the state of Minnesota would have kept up with inflation, our school district, Lakeville School District, would have another $18.8 million in our budget. The other area that we're really short on, of course, is special education. We talk about it all the time. Back in '22, the state was short on giving school districts special ed funding by $712 million. Now, we have had some new funding lately. It was great. It's helped a lot, but we are still short $408 million statewide when we talk about special ed funding. And for our district, we still have a cross subsidy of $6 million. I think it's very important to understand that because there's a change in tax, it doesn't mean there's a change in the budget. Okay? All state levy is based on state-determined formulas plus voter-approved referendum. Some increases in taxes are revenue neutral. Either we have increased tax and a little less aid. The state does that a lot, or they'll come through and say they have more aid for us, and then we'll change it on the tax side. The expenditure budget is limited by our revenue that we receive on the formulas. We certainly don't have any other areas to get any revenue, so we can't spend more than what we bring in, of course. And of course, like I said, an increase in school taxes does not correlate to an increase. The city and county have a little different set of rules than the school district. First of all, they run on a calendar year budget. So the hearings that they're having right now, their budget starts right away in January, where the money we're talking about this evening in our levy doesn't start until next July. We run on that fiscal year. Okay, we're going to shift now, talk a little bit about the budget. And as I just said, the school district and the county, city is a little different. We don't talk about next year's budget because we don't have next year's budget yet. So that's why we talk about this year budget that we're in, and that's when the county and city, of course, talk about their next budget. Now, of course, our budget is based on different funds. You can see our general fund, of course, is by far the majority of our budget, but we have other funds, the food service, community service, and so forth, where those dollars are only spent on those pieces. Here's what we just finished up. The red columns are from the year we just finished. So you can see in the general fund, our volume there, we had revenues of $208 million and expenditures of just under $200 million. And we have a fund balance now, overall fund balance has grown now to $25.5 million. But at the same time, as we've talked, our unrestricted dollars, the board has asked to get that up to 10%, and we are just now at 7%. When we look at the year that we're in, you can see there we have revenues at 212 and expenditures about the same. So we're not going to see a big increase in our fund balance at the end of this particular year. We'll see some increases, but not what we've seen the last. Just wanted you to be aware of that. So overall, our student nutrition fund has been very, very healthy over the last few years. It spent down last year a little bit, but that was on purpose. We bought some equipment. We bought some tables for the students in the cafeterias. But we're still, that fund balance at $3.8 million is actually still a little bit too big for what the state wants us to get down to a 3-month reserve. So again, that's very healthy. Community service, a few years back through the pandemic, they had lost quite a bit of fund balance, and they're just coming along now about even on a yearly basis. Our building fund, you see there that it dropped quite a bit this year, but of course that's how we work. We borrow the money, we put it in the building fund, and then we do our projects. So that's expected to go down. And you see there, as we talked about LTFM, there will be a bonding this next spring, so that's why you're seeing that fund balance grow in the year that we're in. Our debt service fund is the only thing that runs through there is only our bond payments, and then our internal service fund. We've talked about this in the past, that we had quite a bit of usage of our insurances in the past spring and summer. You saw a substantial decrease in that fund balance. It is behaving itself so far this year, and we're hoping that will remain.
Are we waiting for any rebound in that?
I don't, no, we're not. We went through and double checked everything was there, and there's nothing missing. The rebates are they kind of hide in the dollars how we receive them, but they're all there. We verified that.
Cost about
Yeah, we overspent that fund by over $5 million. Important to understand that the dollars we're talking about tonight are the tax portion.
Bill, can we go back to the previous slide? I'm sorry. I was going to ask so you're asking about the debt service fund, or?
internal service fund related to insurance.
Oh, yes, our insurance. Oh, I was looking at our debt. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so let's make sure we understand this. The internal service fund is our insurance that we pay for ourselves. 1.8 million.
Started the year at 7.2.
So we've already spent more than this. Oh, I'm sorry, we've already overspent. Oh, this is last year. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This is
In
last
fiscal
year.
25, this fund was overspent, so fund balance came down.
our insurance claims were higher than we were anticipating.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
so our insurance claims came in $5 million planned for, which decreased our savings account balance for that internal service fund, 7 million to 1.8. Got it. So we don't know if we're gonna spend $5 million more this year. When do we normally find that out, or like how do we have guardrails? Because if we can't, if it goes in the hole or it goes in the negative, it comes out of our general savings account.
That's correct.
Okay, and so if we only have $1.8 million right now, what are, like, I know this is probably for another meeting, so I apologize, but I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. Like, we're anticipating a 1.8, we're anticipating a $200,000 increase to that fund by the end of next, or this year,
Yeah.
by June.
In fiscal '26, we're, what, about a third of the way through the year at this point?
Yeah.
But yes, we don't expect some big rebound. Our increases for our premiums this past year were only 5%. Okay, so if we see the same type of usage as we saw
Yes.
in '25, yes, the fund will.
And that's something that we can't control.
No, we
Like,
cannot.
if it happens, it happens. If it happens again in this cycle, that's another potential $5 million that we would dip $3 million into our savings account. And that is one of the, I would say, the negatives of when you are self-insured and you choose to run our own insurance operation. So,
Yeah, that's the risk that we have. It's been great for our employees the last few years, where we've seen increases of only 5% are in premiums. The last 3 years straight running, where most insurance that market is going up 9-10% in a year.
and then was there a reason that we didn't increase premiums for this school year, or was it kind of too late because the claims came in and we already set the premiums for this school cycle?
There was when we reset the rates, that's in the spring.
Yep.
We have our open enrollment in April, right? So all those were set in April.
And then the claims came in
And the
summer.
increases we saw were May, June, and July.
Got it.
Yeah, Bill, we are funded up to the aggregate stop loss, aren't we? I mean,
Yeah,
do
we have a stop
funds.
loss for any large,
Yeah, I know we have a stop loss, but are we funded? Do we have the money so that we've got money to pay claims up to that aggregate stop loss? Because once that happens, then the insurance company picks up 100%. With that being said, we are funded up to the aggregate, right? The aggregate stop loss, annual stop.
yes.
Okay.
Is it an aggregate, or is it just?
But
per
it's not
claim?
really, it's actually per claim, right? So
We don't have an aggregate, we just have an individual stop loss? Okay, so we have an open end on the back. Oh,
Few
Yeah,
aggregate
it's
claims.
high
yeah,
risk.
yeah.
Super high risk, yeah.
Ouch,
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
this is actually, since we started 5-6 years ago, this is the first year that we've seen a decrease come down. It's been growing. And we had no expectation that this would happen here this last spring.
I feel like there's been conversation in the news and other employers about the new the weight loss drugs are a major contributor to that. Is that a true?
Well, it's a contributor. It's not the main contributor
Okay.
by any means, but we are seeing,
what
we are seeing
happened?
some very, very large increases in the drug payouts for those types of drugs.
So what was the main, just an unusual year of need, or was there a,
You know, we don't see, you know, who got what type of
Right.
service. We just see the aggregate dollars, right? But we know that we both, 3 months where we had claims of almost $2 million more than we brought in. What happened in the spring into the summer.
we don't know what type of care is needed for, we just.
Well, we have a list, and we can get you those.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so if those claims are occurring in those respective months, is anyone watching to see if those claims are continuing on in the next?
Oh, yeah, we're watching
we're-
that every
where
single
we are right
month.
now.
We,
I mean, just- it's
like
like
the last, once this year started now, our revenue has been greater than our expenditures,
Yep.
but they're not large numbers, okay? But both in September and October, they were positive. We have no guarantee as we go through the year what might happen or not
I
happen.
mean, I assume it's summertime, people are getting like
Well, they have time, yeah.
a new knee or something like that, and a lot of them.
I think the biggest issue for this particular internal service fund, because we are self-insured, and I don't know if there's a policy right now in place where there's a set number that needs to be hit so that premiums need to be adjusted so that there is a fund balance or there is a savings account. Because if there isn't, then it comes out of our general fund account. So this is probably for another meeting for consideration on having some sort of security a percentage for the internal service fund. That now again, that would be applied to all of those that choose to elect insurance through our school district. They would have to pay the additional premiums to ensure that there is a savings account so that it doesn't go below. But that's for another day. But the purpose of my questioning earlier was just asking about the expenditures of $212 million. Is that what was approved by the board in June? Did the initial budget, and has that changed? Because we approved it as
The budget was brought to the board in June.
Yeah.
We have not changed the budget.
Okay.
We are working on a revised budget. We're now, back in June, we definitely had a lot of estimates on, we didn't know who we were going to hire. We were hired all the way through the summer, right? And now we'll bring forward a revised budget with exactly who we've hired. So we know a lot better idea exactly what we're going to spend in a particular year.
But the 212 that we're seeing now is the estimate that was provided.
Correct.
And then you're going to come back later to say, here's the revised estimate.
Correct.
It could be up or down. We don't know yet. We have to wait.
I'm sorry, you will have to.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, important to see again, the money we're talking about when we talk about our levy is about 25% of our general fund budget. So just to put in context, when we look at how the money is being spent, you can see that by far the majority of the dollars that we spend are going directly to our students. Look at the elementary, secondary education, all the way around the corner to pupil support services. We're pushing 80%. And if you look at the object level, you can see again, we are a people person, a people business, right? So by far, you can see 80% of our dollars go to the people that we hire to serve our students. Okay, I'm going to shift gears. We're going to now talk about the levy. We're going to talk about the determination of the levy, and we're going to do some comparison from this year to next year, and then reasons for some of those changes that we see on that levy. And it takes a little bit of time to talk about impact on our taxpayers. Now, this looks familiar, looks pretty familiar for everybody. Or if you own a piece of property, you received one of these in the mail between November 10th and the 25th. Every owner of a taxable property, of course, pays taxes to the taxing jurisdictions as the county, the city, school district, etc. Each taxing jurisdiction sets its own levy based, like I said earlier, on limits on state law. Of course, the county does most of the work for us. They send out the bills, they collect the money, and then they forward those funds to us. Each school district may have can levy taxes in over 40 different categories. Now, for us, we don't have 40, but we do have 26. Quite a few different revenue streams that we work with on a yearly basis. The maximum levy amounts are set by MDE for each category. It's based on state law. And of course, if we have order approval on something, then that's those limits. The property tax process, key steps, and we'll talk about here in the next slide. So of course, the city or county assessor determines the estimated market value on each parcel of property. The legislature sets the formulas for the tax capacity on each school district with the levy limits. And then the county auditor calculates the tax capacity for each parcel of property, as well as the total tax capacity for the school district. And of course, Minnesota Department of Education, they calculate the levy limits, the maximum of what we can do in all these different areas, all these different revenue streams. So the school district really only has one piece of this. Back in September, I brought you a preliminary levy. And it hasn't changed since then. If you remember at the time, there was the question whether we would renew the capital projects levy, but we did. So it is the same as we talked about at that time. Of course, then our county auditor divides the final levy, spreads it across everybody. So again, when we talk about the approval that what we do, back in September 8th, that's the first time that we see anything from MDE. And we work with them to make sure everything is correct by the time we bring that preliminary levy to the school board the end of September. And of course, in mid-November, the statements go out to everybody. We do our public hearing as we're doing this evening, and we take action to certify that levy for the next school year. Now, here's the good news. I know we have a lot of different taxing jurisdictions looking at some relatively large increases. You see there, our overall increase for taxes for the 27 school year or the pay 26 levy is $326,000, or less than 0.5% at 0.42%. Now here's where we talk about all the different revenue streams that we get. These are all different, and they all come through our taxes. Now this first section on top, the first third, that's where our operating levies fit. Especially the number 4, you see there that the operating levy by itself is going to generate almost $25 million for fiscal year 27. The local optional revenue, LOR, it's always hard to try to explain what happened here, but the state does realize that they're not funding districts like they should. So they allow school districts to levy this LOR. In our case, we had operating levies already in place, so what they've done is taken our operating levy, rolled it into the LOR. So we didn't get more money, it just is now hooked to LOR. And what's frustrating about that is the inflation factor that we had on our operating levies, we don't get it on the LOR. That's just the same amount every year, $724. But you see, so we have some increases there. That's based upon, number 1, the inflation rate that's tied to our operating levy, and the enrollment increases, because we get paid per student when we look at these dollars. Now you look on the second section. Now these are all assigned. These are restricted dollars. You see that the achievement and integration, this is the portion that is levied. About 2/3 of it we get an aid from the state of Minnesota, so this isn't the full budget for A&I. Our Safe Schools money, this is for our school resource officers. You see there that we have Safe Schools District 917. We're a member of District 917, and they don't have any type of levy authority. So all the member districts do have some level of authority then to give to 917 for that purpose. So the Safe Schools, you can see there that about $200,000 we're collecting and sending to them. You see them also on your lease levy, the buildings that they're leasing. Their portion there is about $400,000. We're levying that money and sending it over to them. You see some of the other areas here. We got the vocational. There's a small piece that helps us with our vocationally our teachers and our vocational programs. Reemployment. That's not the summer employment that we've talked about in the past. That's strictly unemployment where we're able to levy what we have to pay out. You see there we have a $31,000 piece of the levy. Our QComp funds are kind of like the A&I funds, where 1/3 of it's here in the levy, 2/3 of it's in aid from the state of Minnesota. Going down to the last portion, that's all the capital components. Our operating capital, it kind of works the same way. We get about half of it through our levy, half of it through state aid. Our LTFM dollars, they're in two different areas too. You'll see a general fund portion, which is here at about $8 million. The other portion is in Fund 6, where we actually borrow bonds and do those projects through Fund 6. And then you see an LTFM piece there for 917 also. This is something that they haven't done in the past, so this is brand new this year, where $85,000 is going to District 917 for the LTFM program.
Okay, Bill. So this list of, so these are all of our tax levies that are part of our general fund. Again, there are 6 funds that we use, but in general, costs about $285 million to run our operation every year. So as I look at this list, pretty much all of it is pretty much required. The state says, here's what you have to levy. The only lever that we probably as a board control the most is number 4, the referendum. Is that an accurate statement?
I would say that's a very accurate statement.
Okay,
Yes.
so when I look at the referendums number 4, that's $24.9 million. So we as a board have the ability to request additional funding from our community. And previous boards, as well as what we have done just most recently, have determined that at like less than 10% of the $285 million that it costs to run our district, we are asking that additional funding from our community members. So everything else is really not a whole lot that we can control. And there are some districts that might get $35 million from their community members. But at this time, Lakeville taxes less than 10% of our annual expenditures from our community members. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna, okay, you see a total here. You see then for the general fund, the pay 26 levy here at $58.6 million. When we switch over here to community service, there's a small levy that comes for them every year. It's per capita. It's not based on students. It's based on per capita that actually live in our district. So the basic levy, the youth service, and after school is all based on per capita. Early childhood, this is something every single year bounces around a little bit. When we talked about the formula, it doesn't mean we have less dollars for early childhood because we get more aid instead. But you see here the levy's down about $23,000. The other piece here where it's affecting them a little bit, school age care, you see the levy there at $598,000. That's what they expect to spend on the 4 after-school daycare program for special ed students. And you see the year before we didn't use all that fund, so that's why you're seeing that $120,000 adjustment, negative adjustment, that money that goes back to our taxpayers because we didn't use it. Okay, and then debt service, of course, this is just paying for our bonds, the basic levy. You know, the bonds that we have right now that we're making payments on, basics at 7.2, LTFNs at $12 million. So overall, again, we have a total levy of $78,329,960 for the increase of $326,000 overall. Okay, what can affect somebody's taxes on their piece of property? Of course, changes in the value of an individual property. So if you're seeing a big change in taxes on your property, that means there's a big change in your valuation of your property. Changes in total value of all property within a district. Now we're seeing that here. We're seeing new properties being built, new properties coming onto the rolls. So lots of times when we talk about a 0.42 increase on our taxes, most people aren't seeing that because we have more people paying their piece of the pie. Okay. So higher market value, you pay a bigger piece of the pie. Lower, of course, you see a smaller one. So each property owner pays their piece of that pie. So what happens when something changes with your house? Okay, so we have 2 properties in the district. Both are valued at $500,000. We have a total levy of it's a simple example, but $5,000. So each of those properties are going to pay half of that because they're valued at the same amount. But if it changes, say the orange house now increases by 10%, but the blue house increases by 25%. We still, the school district still only receives the $5,000. But the blue house are going to pay more than that half now. And when we look at our taxes over the last few years, I think it's important to point this out, that from 23 to 26, we have a 4-year period here. If you look at the under residential homestead, the $500,000, which is pretty close to what our average is now in the value of a home in our district, you see that back in 23, that tax was $2,803, and you push forward here to 26, and it's $2,746. There's actually a decrease in taxes over the 4 years for the homeowners.
Because there are more homes now, spread the.
It's partially because there's more homes. Yep. Yeah, that's the biggest contributor.
And any increase that we're seeing is coming from the city of Lakeville and Dakota County?
And on your tax statement, it's very specific. The county, the city, and the school district are listed separately, so you can see the changes from year to year on your tax statement.
And the city doesn't have to go out to vote? They just raise taxes on their own?
That's true. They look at their budget and they say, we need to change the tax rate by whatever to get what they need.
Well, yeah, they don't have to go to voters, but Lakeville, I think both Lakeville and Elko New Market very, in Dakota County, they're very sensitive to that situation tax-wise. And I think that Dakota County still remains, if not the lowest, one of the lowest. Just, you know, I work with many of these folks to talk to them about that. I think there's fiscal conservatism in how they approach it. I think as Director or Mr. Leatherman shared with us, across the state there's been an increase in county and cities. It's anomalous. You look over the historic, just
I think a challenge with county right now, and maybe this supports the survey. So I serve on a county board as well, or a county commission, and our county commissioners have not levied much of an increase for the last like 5 years. It's remained relatively flat, but by doing that, they weren't able to keep up with the cost, and so there's a huge levy this time around. And so there's like a balance here of like, is it better to just do 2% or 3% or do 12%, you know, out of the gate? And I think that's hard, right, to figure out.
This slide is just a graphical form of the same data, but you can see on the left side there, that's an average home of $500,000 in value. You can see how that changed. It actually. Okay, there are some refunds deferral programs when it comes to taxes. Homestead credit refund is available to all homesteaded property. That includes a house, garage, and 1 acre only. It is limited, so if you know, the more you make, the less you get. But there's a maximum refund there of $31.40. For renters, it's $24.40. There is a special property tax refund. So when you see a large increase in your taxes, of at least 6% and at least over $100 from the prior year, that refund is 60% of that tax increase. You are seeing some large increases in your taxes. That is something people can go back and look at. There is a senior citizen property tax deferral program for senior citizens who are on, you know, have limited income, where they can lock their taxes in at a flat that doesn't change from year to year. But at the end, when that house or that property is sold at that time, then that tax has to be caught up. Okay, a part of the hearing is we need to take a few minutes to accept comments on the proposed levy. So at this time, I will open it to the floor for anybody who wants to comment. Okay, with no comments, then that's all I have for my presentation this evening, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, Bill.
Bill, is the board certifies 2025 property tax levy, is that page 26?
Yeah, that's the one we just talked about. Yep.
Any board member reports?
Yeah, yesterday I had the opportunity, and Director Anderson was with me also, to sit in on the Teaching and Learning Committee. And we got to experience a number of things, but one of the things that I came away with and that I was very pleased with is that Tracy is looking at creating a strategic vision for 2030 and then working that back as an approach to making sure that curriculum, teaching, all the things that are involved there are really starting to get a strategic focus. And I thought that was really good and glad to see what.
I think it was last Friday, Chair Swanson and I were able to tour Pathways, our ALC, and thankful for the principal there and students and staff for hosting us. It was great to see the space and to hear what's working well and what changes they'd like to see in the future. I also attended on Friday and Saturday. I served as a delegate for the Minnesota School Board Association's assembly. At that meeting, the assembly reviews resolutions from school boards throughout the state and makes recommendations on whether they should become part of the MSBA's legislative agenda. So we reviewed 36 resolutions and passed maybe like 20 or so of them. And just, I think some things to note, we had a presentation on Friday night from a professor at the University of Minnesota from the Humphrey School, Larry Jacobs, who kind of gave an overview of the political climate, both nationally but in the state. And I think one of the interesting things was he had a slide. I should have taken a picture. They're going to email, I'll email you all the slides when they come, but the number of mandates that have been put on school boards from all parties in the state of Minnesota in the last 20 years has doubled. And so about 20 years ago, there's about 30 or so mandates that school districts had to deal with. Now we're up in upwards of the 70, number 70 of mandates. And people kind of asked why, and he said those are a lot easier for legislators to get behind and to pass because they're not having to allocate resources or dollars. And so he said both parties are loving to put mandates on school districts, and that as a result, we're the ones dealing with how to operationalize them and fund them. And then the other thing coming out of that meeting was there's a presentation on we have a state public land trust that funds some of our public education dollars for schools. So state 100 years ago or so, more than that, property was set aside in the state of Minnesota, and the proceeds from the mineral rights and from the sales of those properties are in a trust that it's a small amount of money per student, but nevertheless provides funding in perpetuity for students. And MSBA, along with legislators, are looking to change the U.S. or not the state constitution to allocate those resources slightly differently, spending a little bit more of the trust than they currently are. And it's been highly vetted in terms of keeping the fund sustainable for the long term, but getting a little bit more resources out of that. And so there will be a proposal, I think, to amend the state constitution, and I can send more information about that, but it seemed like something that their MSBA is recommending that board members look at and potentially support if.
I attended a couple different things this week. So I was invited, I think the rest of the board was invited to an open house that was at Cherry View Elementary for the special education Setting 3 programs that are in that building. My husband and I both attended. I brought him along with me because our children had attended Cherry View Elementary in those programs a long time ago. And so it was kind of nice to not only see how the programs have evolved and changed and talk with the staff, but to personally thank them for their involvement in my children's education and success in life. So that was kind of a fun event for my family. I liked that. And then I also was invited to the girls wrestling meet that was this last Saturday. I got to talk with several of the student athletes and the parents and see several of our student athletes wrestle, and that was really fun to see, especially since I grew up in Iowa, which is very much a wrestling state. We had a girls wrestling team when I was in high school, again, like a long time ago. So I'm glad to see that Minnesota is jumping on that, and that I think the thing that I was most impressed with the students was just that it's not just like the physical strength and the emotional strength to participate in that sport, but for the women that are in that sport, like the strength of character to have a sport that's maybe not as popular for women, and just having that out there that we're doing that, and they're building that team up. One of the things that I would like a follow-up with on the district level is that there were students on the team that were women from Lakeville North, but there weren't any from Lakeville South. And so I just want to make sure that that's not like an access issue, or do they know about the team, or, because it is hard, like trying to grow a team and get the word out about those types of things. So making sure that all of our girls have equal access to that sport. And then a really cool thing, I attended the event downtown, the holiday thing on Saturday for the city, was shopping around, and I ran into a past employee that had been a speech pathologist in Lakeville that is now writing children's books. So I thought that was kind of cool too. So our staff, you know, they do great things while they're here, but then they also do great things when they leave us too. So really great books. If you'd like to read them, I purchased both. And she has another book coming out in 2 weeks. So anyway, that's it.
I will add, I attended, well, there's 15 wrestlers. And then Lakeville North too.
Mhm.
And I don't think Lakeville South wasn't there, but I don't.
They do not have a female wrestling team, but like they could combine with our Lakeville North team, and then it would make that team more competitive overall. So I just want to make sure that, you know, that's one of the bonuses of having 2 high schools in one city, is that we can combine our forces for some of those less popular sports right now and try to grow the opportunities for our student athletes. So it was just one of those things that all of the girls on the team had mentioned too. So I thought, yeah, it was really something to see. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, Tony's waving.
Tony, sorry.
I just want to highlight, I think it was Tony and Carly and I, a couple other staff, we went to the Chamber of Commerce event, and I just want to offer a commendation to choral directors and our encore and now and then singers. It's wonderful. I don't know why I like it so much, but I love it, and it was a good time. So thank you for that. Because more business here.
There's also really great.
Helps. All right, on to our recommended actions. I would entertain a motion to approve levy.
Second?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said you just made a motion.
Oh, no, sorry, I said I would.
Oh, sorry, I'll make a motion to certify the A26 tax levy.
Thank you. There is a motion by Director Cameron. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Director Baker. Roll call for vote to approve or certify the K-26 tax levy.
Yes.
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 Yes. Approved. Certified. Moving on to approval of combining polling locations. We have a couple options that have been presented. Discuss this. For special elections only.
So I was not present at the last meeting when this was discussed. I want to make sure that I understand this clearly. Again, this is for when Lakeville School District needs to do an election or needs to do voting, and it's not part of a general election, so it's a one-off or levy or whatever it may be. Looking at some of the financials of these recommendations, and it looks to me that all three options we need to go with, 2, 3, or 5, it's going to cost about $127,000. $139,000 and $131,000. So low $100,000 is how I'm understanding the cost of these three options. I guess I'd like to better understand what is the overall cost if we didn't make any changes and giving our voters to continue to vote where they've historically voted in past meetings. Past elections. So I'm just curious, like, what is the actual cost saving? Is there any?
Savings, I think we indicated there, and I don't have the document. Depending on what the consolidations are, there's two elements. One is the total number of polling locations that we have.
Yep.
The other one is kind of a very different situation because Scott County and Dakota County are using different voting platforms, I guess is the easiest way I would describe that. So if we operate a site in Scott County, we will realize less savings on that. I don't know, Kim, if you have, can you?
Yeah, I see the number of what the spend is.
It looks like, in a presentation you sent like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
For 20 locations, it's about 160.
Okay.
Is that right? 160,000? I'm looking at, with 20? In the original packet. Yeah.
Okay. So it's 167. Sorry.
Did you just do that?
$160,000 is what we have historically spent, but with the new Scott County changes, that cost could be higher. And we don't really know how much higher because we've got to go get the ballots, we got to go create the ballots, we got to test the ballots and program it.
It's really about the time that our employees will spend to prepare those platforms.
But is
Because
there a
they'll be
cost to
two
that,
different.
That's not calculated.
I know, but is there a cost to that because our employees are salaried employees? This is part of their job.
Well, there's
Responsibilities?
distribution where logistically where we are going to the locations.
Yep.
And those are hourly rated employees, usually.
And that would be part of the $160,000 for expenditure. Okay. And so by dropping down to 2, 3, or 4, 5 locations, we're saving roughly $20,000 to $30,000. The proposal
On special election.
on special elections. Instead of 160, we're spending 130. So then what we're doing in that $20,000 difference, $30,000 difference, we are moving from 20 polling locations to 2, 3, or 5.
Correct.
Okay. And so the $30,000 in savings, is that going to make it easier for our constituents to vote? Or is that $30,000 savings worth having a centralized location for our constituents? That's how I'm seeing it. It's a $30,000 promotion, advertising, marketing expense one would consider as part of, we're doing a levy, and we need to make sure it's easy for people to go find where to vote. But that's one lens of looking at it. That's what I'm seeing so far.
Yeah.
Director Provo.
Yeah, and I think that's an appropriate lens. Yeah, we can save a few dollars, but here I think is the important. If you look at last fall, not like a few months ago, but previous fall, the difference between two candidates were 17 votes. Now, you could say that that was a full throttle election, but that doesn't mean that couldn't happen in a special election. You look at this last fall, and I think I'm correct in these numbers, but I think the difference, 250 to 300 votes, something in that range. Again, not a huge number of votes. And there are three options here, and two of the three options do not have a voting spot for Scott County. I think that, Brian, I'm coming back to your point, I don't think we should create an impediment by not having a voting place in Scott County and having all those people have to come up to Dakota County. I have no problem in Lakeville, somebody going 5 miles instead of 2 miles, but if somebody coming up 10, 15, 18 miles, that might dissuade them from voting that day or night. And again, I said 17 and about 250 or 300. Those are close margins, and that could be enough to turn an election, no matter who's winning or losing.
So I appreciate you sharing that, but I don't think those numbers are. I don't have as much high value, or let me rephrase it. That those numbers I'm not looking at the numbers. What I would rather than look at if in a general election we've got 10 to 12, 13,000 people voting, and then in an off-cycle election it's generally half as that. And so with the 20 locations. Go ahead.
Did you have a thought?
Well, I'm not going to interrupt. Finish your son.
No, I'm just saying that with the significant reduction of voters participating, that was with having 20 locations for them to even go to. So if we're going to condense it even more so, one can assume the voter participation might be even half of that, or will be lower. I'm making an assumption.
That's not what the Dakota County
Yeah.
judge said at all.
Okay, that's not what they said?
No.
We asked that, and yeah, because that was a concern.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I was going to say is we're not first. In fact, we're one of the only districts that does this. And so I think one thing to consider is there are other districts doing this that are not having that. And then also significant challenge for our staff to set up all these polling locations and be managing all of them. Good reason why it's not.
All right, Tony, go ahead.
Well, and there's
the
also
volume.
early voting opportunities
Yeah.
are different. And mail-in voting, unless they change the law on that, which,
But this is for an off-cycle election. This is for levies. This is for
this is for school
this
district
is school and
only.
district related things. And so we're not going to have 45,000 people vote. We would love to, but the historical data doesn't show that. And so we might be lucky to get 10 to 15, in that particular range. And so can you guys help me understand like this whole Scott County thing and then versus not Scott County thing? Because I thought
There's different machines
Yep.
that are far more complex.
and then we would take on ownership of figuring that out if we put a polling location over there.
Yes. Dakota County updated their machines.
Okay.
Scott County has not.
Got it.
But Scott County machines are still sufficient not to vote
That's
and
correct.
and
They
to
are,
do it
right.
reliably, and I think that's an important, because I agree, we've heard that Dakota County has upgraded everything, but that doesn't mean that Scott County is not, I think that's,
I like to call the question. Vote. I'd like to make a, motion to approve the combining of 5 polling locations, option 3, I believe it is. No, not super, wasn't super combined 2?
There's super combined 2, and then there's,
Oh, super combined 5, the recommended proposal from the school.
Is there a second? There's a second. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I'm not aligned to that. I mean, if you've got, if I'm reading it correctly, all 5 polling locations will be in the northeast section of our school district bond. And so there would be no polling location in, is that the one that we're,
oh, that's,
yeah,
there's one here.
yep, so all
There's
5, so there's 1 in the middle,
northwest.
and then 4 on the top corner of Lakeville. There's none on the west side, there's none on the
There's-
south side. Right, but you also have 4 polling locations on the northeast side of Lakeville. So you're disregarding the Scott County voters, you're discounting the Elko, the folks.
But I think the rationale here, Brian, was this is the most southern, keep everything.
I get that. So if that's the case, then the way I'm thinking about this, that you've got a boundary of 194, and the boundary should be, like, if you're a voter in Scott County or Elko or Newmarket or all the way on the far right of Farmington, you should have the same amount of distance or the same amount of access to vote. And then if you've got 4 polling locations, like literally on the top right-hand side, that's not fair. Like what?
Because it's higher density, so you're gonna have more people going
yeah,
through
but
those
go
locations.
Yeah.
ahead.
No, I mean, if we're condensing, we do have one closer to Elko Newmarket.
Yeah.
Got one kind of mid-center in District 4, and then one a little more northern district. So yeah, I do concern. If it's extra cost, and we don't know what the extra cost is, but removing a Scott County location. But that's just my thoughts. I know
Well,
that there is a
Yeah, I'm not sure removing Scott, and I expressed this a moment ago, I don't think it's a good idea to remove Scott County totally. I like the 3 locations, Scott and Dakota. Again, I don't mind people driving 5 miles instead of 2 miles in Lakeville, but Scott County is a totally different scenario.
I guess now I'd like to call the question.
Call the question, you can vote on this. People can vote on it.
We'd have to vote to stop.
Yes. No.
The vote to
Is this?
No,
No,
is
we're
this
voting no
vote
to
to stop?
whether or not to stop.
Yes.
Yes.
No?
No.
Yes.
With discussion being stopped, vote on the superintendent's 5 polling locations. Call the roll. No.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
No?
No.
So I make a motion to have one
Hold on.
central location on number
Just a
4.
second. For the vote fails.
Yes.
Yeah.
Make a motion to pass one location, number 4, for all these off-cycle elections.
What's number 4?
Oh,
What?
I'm sorry, in precinct number 4, or wherever that.
So,
Oh,
Brian,
plain
point of clarification, Brian, are you talking about the 3 locations? So there's something in Scott and something in Dakota?
Talking about one
No,
location.
I'm proposing just one location, right deck smack in the middle of our boundary, and if you can get there, you get there. That's where it is. It's equitable, it's fair, it fits everybody.
I second that.
There's a second, being a first and a second. Any discussion on that proposal?
I guess like we don't have any information on that, like just a one. And it's not one of the locations that was talked about at our last work session. So I don't,
It is the location.
It is one of the locations, it's, so, I believe it's the one with 2 locations. We're just removing the one in precinct 6,
Trinity Church.
and then just using number 4. It centralizes it, messaging makes it easier, communication, everybody has access to it. It's equal distance from those that are on the north side, south side, west side, east side, and it's just one. Ideally, I would assume it's gonna be probably $2,000 cheaper because as I look at the data, everything is about $2,000 in difference as you move down from 3 to 4 to 5.
Yeah, but
So-
Brian, again, I'm not sure money, $2,000, $3,000 is not a lot of money when you impede votes. When you
Totally
create
agree,
an
but-
impediment-
Hey, hold up. Tony's been raising his hand.
Yeah, go ahead.
Director Reichenberger.
so wouldn't that be proposal 3?
Yeah, well. All right, then we're just vote on that. One polling location. Or else when you call the vote.
No.
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 Yes.
Yes,
No.
can I have it? I won't make a motion, it's just. All right, I think we,
We have one left.
yep.
Let's just vote on that one.
No,
All right.
I know, but
Okay,
I
we're
think,
gonna
but the problem with
option
the 3 options, from my understanding, is that if you put a polling location down in 19 or somewhere in Scott County, then the district is responsible for managing, learning, operating another voting machine, voting system.
Right.
And so so to make it fair for our community, it doesn't matter where you live in our school district, this is where you go vote, that's where you go vote. And so having 3, 1 north, 1 middle, 1 south, I'm not aligned to it because it makes it more complicated. So either we do 1 or we just leave it as is.
All right.
I think the 2 is
I'm gonna make a
fine.
motion, find the 3 locations.
We have 2 options left.
Yeah,
Yes,
the 2
because the first one
Oh,
has
that's
a
right.
north and a southern one.
All right, well, I'm gonna make the motion to do the combined 3 locations, Dakota and Scott County.
I'll second that motion.
First and a second, is there any discussion?
I think I align with Director Thompson, and after hearing the Dakota County, last meeting, I'm not interested in having our staff being responsible
Right.
for, running Scott County's machines, and, I live in the way north part of the district, and people who live in the way south that have just as far to drive with like the one point. So, I think, again, I agree with Director Thompson, like one school district, I don't believe we make accommodations because you live in a different county necessarily.
And more people are there.
Further discussion?
Excuse me, can I get a point of clarification? What are we voting on?
We're voting on the second of the two. It's combined 3 locations, one.
No.
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 Yes.
Yes?
I think I would have liked it if it was all one locate, if a one
You'd
mission.
say yes or no.
No.
All right, any other motions on this issue?
Is
We
it,
have one more to vote on.
I got a
I'll make a
Somebody's
motion
I've got a
to,
question.
I'll make a motion to approve.
point of information,
Wait. Are you, what?
does this need to be done today? Is
No.
it necessary?
I mean, if we don't vote on something, we don't vote on something.
She's making
Well,
a motion.
I'm making a
so-
motion.
If we're gonna
Yes.
do it, we're gonna combine.
So I'm gonna make a motion to approve the super 2 location.
Second.
Second by Cameron. Any discussion?
Yes, I make a motion, oh, do you wanna,
Yeah, it's the motion for the super combined
2 locations.
2 locations. It's the first option in the board packet. There being a precinct at, a voting location in precinct 6 and precinct
In Dakota County.
both in Dakota County. There has been a first and a second. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, how would this break up? Like, who determines which precincts, which voters go to number 6? Or is that something decide later, or
That's-
decide the county? And so, and that, do we think that's gonna confuse people with,
We asked about that last
and
time,
they said there's no
no.
confusion?
Find out where they need to.
And then, can someone help me, can share with me why you want a second location, and why have, instead of just, what would be, like,
Crowd control.
You offer 2 places to go, hopefully to divide voters so that it's. I think honestly, if we are going to go down to 1, I would just like to do work. Always reconsider moving to 1. And that would be my.
Call vote?
No.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
no?
Yes.
Other motions? Director Thompson?
Make a motion to do number 1 location again?
I
That
thought we
we got
voted
through
on
this
that.
exercise?
I
We already
thought we
voted on
voted
it.
on
You
that.
have to have a 2/3 vote to turn it over.
Yeah. All right,
Make a motion to table it to next week. Have further discussion.
Okay.
I mean, you can come up with additional ideas, but unless there's another motion, we'll move on. All right. Facilities bonding. We talked about this at our meeting, our planning meeting, just on how to operate this or how to go about. My thought is to start, I'm just going to kick it off with a motion on what I think is maybe a consensus item between board members, and if we want to. What we're doing is essentially right now authorizing the administration to prepare a review and comments for the Minnesota Department of Education. We come back in January to schedule the special election, but we have to figure out what items and dollar amounts we would push for the review and comment for MDE. So with that, again, I'm going to start with something. If people add, if we can get that approved, and if people want to add things after that, that's fine. But yeah, so pursuant to Minnesota statute section 123B.71, I would move that the school board for District 194 authorize the administration to prepare and submit to the Minnesota Department of Education the required review and comment for the following facility improvements. And those improvements would be expansion and improvements at Kenwood Trail, Century, and McGuire Middle School, as outlined in option 2 in the November 11, 2025 board meeting packet, in the total amount of $135,068,266. And just for clarification, that is everything on those lists minus the updated furniture and the tennis courts at Kenwood Middle School. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Second by Director Carbone. Any discussion? Director Baker?
I'm concerned with going out for this at this time, given the survey result data and I would say the climate for passing that in the spring. I think that was pretty clear. We don't really have even half of the community supporting that. And I think that when I look at what number one, they don't know that we need more space, so we need time to communicate that. And number two, we need a very thoughtful and detailed plan that outline what our needs are, and I don't feel like this plan has that. So I guess even as a board member, I would have a hard time, like, I mean, I get the additions, that makes sense, but like some of the other things, there are things on there that I can't justify spending that money on right now when I know that people are having a hard time putting food on their table, and with the survey results saying that that community, I don't feel the community would pass it at this time, and I think I need to be thoughtful on how we do that. Like, if we send something to the community, then we're 100% all in on this, including the board. We know every little detail of this. We feel like it's what we need, and then we send it to the community and share that vision. But I guess I just don't see it yet at this point. I don't think it's fully fleshed out.
Can I just ask to clarify? Are you talking about the expansions, including just the expansions, in addition to everything else?
There again, like, I don't know. I just don't feel like we've talked about all these different things. The board has been all over the place on different ideas and ways, and I'm not even 100% sure on what the district's proposal is. Because I feel like they haven't said this is for sure what we're going to do and what we need to do. And then if we go out to the community with the climate the way it is, that's not going to pass.
Director Carbone?
Yeah, please. What I thought I heard tonight was if we do it in May, it's a bad time. If we do it in November, it's a bad time. It sounds like it's a bad time no matter when we do it, but I want to come back to what Lucas and what Michael have said, what I have heard Lucas and Michael say multiple times, different ways. And that is, if we don't make a decision as a board and we delay this, there will be, and I'm going to exaggerate for a moment, there will be kids hanging out of the windows in the middle schools in, I believe, 2 years. That being said, I think if we allow that to happen, we all wear the badge of incompetence. And we have been, I think, very well informed by Lucas and Michael about the importance of this and what's going to happen in 2 years if we don't. And I think we really need to keep that, we really need to consider that strongly.
I don't disagree with you on that. I just don't think our community knows that.
Well, I think we have to have a communication strategy that expresses the need, because what I saw up on those slides tonight is if the community understands the need, the community will sway towards towards voting yes.
I 100% agree with you on that.
I believe
But
that.
I also feel like we've got a quick turnaround to do this. We should have already had the communication plan with this, with all the details on what, I mean, I just don't think it's a very thorough plan. I look at like Wazetta's and they have like all of this information, all the things in their presentation. This is the district's recommendation, and I don't feel like I've had that.
Director Anderson?
But then I also feel like they were waiting for the survey results too, so there's that as well.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges, we have already failed these kids who are coming through, who will be sixth graders in a year and change. And so I want to think about kind of what is not necessarily best for this specific class, but what is best for the next 10 to 15 years for our district. And so it's not that I disagree with doing expansions at some point, but I do think that part of the reason why I asked about the runway question is I don't want to speak for Grace's team. I think that's a pretty slim amount of time to get our community up to speed on this issue. And I would rather us, so I do want to explain one thing. You know, the last time we went for a levy where we created it, we had, and either one of you correct me on this, but we had the survey results in front of us. We sat down at a table and we talked about what the various things that the community was telling us from the survey. We talked about what the district felt were the priorities. We talked about what the board cared about amongst those things. And we developed a levy based on the survey data, considering the tax tolerance and what the community felt was important. And that is just, that process is missing here. So I don't feel like the board has been brought along. It's more, and I don't think the community has been brought along in the same way. And I would like to pause on this, take time, develop a strategy that is going to be more inclusive so that we get to something where we can think 10 years, not the fourth graders that are coming in 2 years. We have CMS at capacity right now. We have Highview over capacity. I mean, these are schools where we are having to manage that. And so there's that happening. I think it's important to deal with it, but I would rather develop a long-term strategy that addresses not just the middle school issue, but other big priorities.
Go ahead, Matt.
I don't disagree with a lot of what you're saying. The problem is we are facing what we're facing, right? It is in our laps. And the question is whether or not we are going to give the community the option to vote for an expansion on these middle schools. I mean, we're not making the decision necessarily. We're saying, hey, we see a need for our schools, and if we do nothing, then we're essentially telling our educators, like, hey, go deal with those full classrooms. You know, they're just going to keep getting fuller and fuller. And if we just sit on our hands, we're going to miss it, you know. And then all of a sudden, then we're going to need a high school expansion, right? Because that's coming down the pike as well. The population keeps growing, so if we just say, hey, we want to wait for better vision, I mean, these expansion plans are plans that were planned when the building was planned, right? So there's not a lot of complexity to it, I would say. It's just, hey, this is where you'd have classrooms. Again, from a timing perspective, could we have had another 6 months to discuss this? Yeah, but we also had our levy renewal vote too, so I don't know that you'd want to be discussing both of those to the public at the same time. So again, I think we've had opportunities to ask questions and dig into this a little bit. I think the expansion part, again, is the only thing I'm necessarily pushing in this initial vote, because I do think there are questions on all the other things that maybe haven't been vetted as much. But my concern is if we do nothing, we're just going to allow the problem that we're seeing at Century to exacerbate, because even if you spread those kids amongst the 3 schools, which is going to take, a bigger boundary adjustment, which we know people don't like, they're immediately going to be at, 87 or 88% capacity, each of the middle schools.
Yeah.
Which is higher than what we currently want for any of our schools. And then there's not going to be a solution because it's going to push out because we need another 8 months. November's not gonna look great for this kind of a vote, especially with what we have on the horizon. So then we're looking at possibly the next spring, which is gonna push us to 2029. So, and then you're looking at maybe a high school vote on that, what, a year or two later. So, Director Baker.
I agree with everything you say, and I'm not saying that we don't ever do it. I'm saying that with the community saying that 3% are the people that are worried about capacity issues, if we go out with a half-baked plan, it's not going to pass, especially when you have less than half supporting it and not understanding what the need is. I just think it does impact more. It's not just additions, because it does impact teaching and learning, especially when you have teachers that are teaching multiple grade levels. We're starting to make headway with our academics, and the last thing I want is to put our teaching and learning department back, or teachers not having, like, there's a lot of things you have to think about in there, because there are contract things with PLC time and making sure that if you're working with multiple grade levels, that you have the time to meet with those multiple grade levels, the learning the curriculum, that we are pushing out new curriculum already. So you have math curriculum and reading curriculum that's new, and making sure that, okay, now you've learned it for 6th grade, now we're asking you to learn it for 7th as well. And just the addition of, there are things that I feel like this is where I'm going. I don't feel like it's a well-vetted plan, because I don't know what are the other things that fall off with this, right? And I have talked to teaching and learning, so I do know that there's impact there. But that's not part of the plan. We're just talking about the building piece, which is fine, but when we go to the community has made it aware that they love our teachers, that they think we're providing a good education. So are we really doing our due diligence if we say, that's okay, we'll worry about that later, we just need to get the space, and we'll let the teachers figure it out, teaching multiple grade levels? I think that we have a great team in place. I just want to give them the opportunity to vet these ideas and go to the community with something that we're all really excited about. And maybe that takes an extra few months to get there, but at least then we're confident in our ideas and selling it to the public.
Yeah, I think the survey we saw tonight changes if there was a communication strategy and an educational strategy. I think a lot of those numbers change, and I think they change in the favor of doing this. And I also believe I do think Lucas and Michael made a strong case for doing this, and I think they were very clear in what they were doing and the plan that they have. And also that if we don't start now, in 2 years, we will have a huge dilemma, and I'll repeat myself, which we will look as though we were incompetent for not handling. And secondly, I also heard Lucas say, I write down a lot of what Lucas says, I like this. What Lucas said is that he anticipates in 5 years to be working on the high schools for all the obvious reasons. So that being said, you have a domino effect here. And if you don't tip that first domino, we're gonna be in, my opinion is, we're gonna be in trouble in not too far distant future. And we really better think about that.
Any other comments?
Tony?
Tony, sorry. You can actually interrupt and say something. That might be easier.
Yeah.
It's all good. It's all good. First off, the idea that this has to be pushed, like, absolutely, positively, 100% just this minute, it's not entirely true. It was mentioned before at a previous meeting that all of these indicators could have been seen 2 years ago, and just nothing was done then. The idea
have just another comment, and then if anybody else does, but, yeah, I mean, this was the recommendation. It was made clear last week by the superintendent. This was the recommendation and the need for the district. So yeah, we are gonna eat this if we say no. We will bear the responsibility for this if we vote this, if we don't provide the space. I mean, we had a teacher come up today and talk about classroom size. I mean, we can't reduce classroom sizes if we don't have the classroom space. So, I mean, that is one of the issues. We can only spread kids so far across a building, and if there's no extra classrooms to do that, then, you know, we'll never be able to reduce classroom sizes. And we know that our district's not gonna shrink. I mean, we're on a growth trajectory, even if it's only 1%. So, yeah, do I wish there's a greater, we had this vision for teaching and learning already? Sure, but we don't, you know, so this is what we have.
But we could.
This is our recommendation. Again, but time is the killer here. I mean, I know, to Tony's point, yeah, I wish this decision would have been made last year or the year before when it was first identified, you know, or bigger plans. Again, I don't even know that these plans are bad necessarily. I mean, it's just newer to us. That doesn't mean they're new to the district. So, but here we are. Again, it's in our lap, so.
Yeah.
Director Cameron.
I feel like I would be remiss not to comment that the survey results do concern me. I think in an ideal situation, you would not be putting a vote out with these results. Now, but I do feel the pressure in space. And so I feel like we're kind of in a catch-22, like damned if we do, damned if we don't. And I'm curious what the communications plan is. It cannot just be the district's department that's responsible for this. We need like substantial resources put into shifting the 3% that think this is a problem to over 50% that think this is a problem. I mean, it was good to see in the survey that a couple of years ago, clearly there was an effort being made to educate the community that this issue was starting, right? And then because of decisions both at this table and in the district, that kind of all fell by the wayside. And so I do feel like the current board is put in this position of like scrambling. And I don't love the answer. It's a flip of a coin whether or not this is going to get passed.
Right.
So I'm struggling with the decision. I'm just going to be frank, because I want a good plan for our district. I want a long-term plan. I just don't want to be reacting because my child, a fourth grader, happens to have a large class, and that's why we're making decisions. But also know that our district continues to grow and that there is continued pressure on our sites as a result of that. So I appreciate the plan being put together. I think another thing from our conversation last week regarding teaching and learning, when our 3 staff members who are presenting said that we are unable to do tier 2 or tier 3 supports right now in our district, if our board, if our district, if our community is not sounding the alarm bells when a sentence like that is said, I think we have serious issues. If we really want to see movement in academic performance, in student well-being, in student belonging, we need more support, student support services, and that money comes from an operating levy. And our community typically isn't one, it's much more likely to pass a bond than a levy, historically. And I'm concerned that we're not thinking about how to package things that are must-dos in terms of space and bonds, because that's what community here tends to support, with immediate needs around teaching and learning. And I realize we can't do that in the spring, like that can only happen in the fall, right? But those things are coloring my opinion of what is the tax tolerance in total, because a community member doesn't think about these different pots, right? They just think about how much money am I having to pay out total. And we're at a critical point of being able to support there's no intervention support in the middle schools, as far as, that's what I've been told, right? That's what we've been told. And I'm glad they'll have the space, but there's no one to support them when they're struggling. There's no one to get to look at these numbers and say, okay, this kid's on the bubble, we need reading intervention, we need math intervention. We have no resources going to that. And it's great to build $140 million additions to fit them. But if we can't educate them, I'm concerned. So I think we're as I said, we're in a tough spot. I am still pondering like what the right decision is for tonight, to be frank. And at the minimum, my hope is that we are putting together packages going forward that support the identified needs from these conversations, especially around teaching and learning, not just amenities that would be nice to have in our school district.
Director Baker.
I also want to comment that when districts are looking at these types of proposals, it is almost unheard of for a board to be required to vote the same day that they've received the results of the survey. Like, usually you use the survey data to tailor your plan to what the community needs are. We haven't even had time to do that. We just got the survey results. We're not going to get the final report that breaks down that data until Christmas. So again,
Too late. Yeah.
right, I don't like to rush into things, but I also want to lay it out there historically. Lakeville has had periods of growth where we've had to have higher classroom numbers. I had my children in 4th and 5th grade with classrooms of 35 kids. Now, was it the greatest learning environment? No, but guess what? They had like all of the supports that they needed because we had all of the academic instruction that was occurring in those environments, even though they were crowded. And the middle school doesn't have that. And let's not forget that 2 years ago, the middle school had significant budget cuts at that level. We cut the second language arts program. We cut some of the wheel classes. We cut language classes. So I think if we're saying that we're addressing the middle school issue, we're not addressing the whole middle school issue. We're putting a Band-Aid on it. And when we go back to the community and we want more money, their tax tolerance is going to be gone because they're going to say, you already came to us and asked for money. Why didn't you ask for this when you needed it? Obviously you didn't need it. It is definitely apparent by our academic scores that we need that support. So I just want to make sure when we're addressing growth, we're addressing all aspects of growth and not just the space issue.
Tony, is your hand up? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I'd like to move to table the discussion to next week.
Is there a second on the motion? Hearing no second, the motion
Nobody
fails.
knows.
Director Thompson.
Yeah, so it's a good discussion. I appreciate it. And I had a chance to listen to the last week's meeting and others. And I think as a board member, it's just my lens, you got to give the community the choice to make their decisions. From my lens, withholding that choice, I don't like what's it hurt? You know, if it passes, great. If it fails, then the community then gets to experience what capacity constraints might look like in our middle schools, and then they can decide, well, maybe the following year we should do that. What I'm hearing from others is that there are a lot of operational staffing opportunities that we should close the gap on, and we haven't had those kind of discussions. And the whole and what I'm hearing is that we'd like to pair that with the building infrastructure. And if you pair that together, then what you're asking for is 2 levies to be asked in one election cycle, whether it be November or another time. Whether you say, if you do this, then you vote for this. And I don't know the probability of 2 levies getting approved at the same time during a regular election. And so I just want to be mindful, like, we need to bifurcate these 2 topics. One is an operating staffing issue that we still need to have conversations on. The other one is setting the district up so that it can scale for growth with the right infrastructure and the right building and the right capacity for our incoming students. And I feel like over the past couple of weeks, the district has done a good job in sharing, here's our gap. They shared with us what the task force wanted. They shared with us what they wanted. And as well as feedback from other staff members, but we're not adding new bells and whistles. We're adding extra capacity so that our 3 middle schools are not going to be at 85% in total utilization. And while 3 that we have, one of them is beyond where it needs to be, we do need to do boundary changes. Totally makes sense that we'll end up having to do that next year. But it sets the stage for us to scale for growth, and the amount of money that we're investing, I think we actually save money, because if we're not purchasing another middle school, another middle school is like $215 million. So we're saving roughly $80 million by going down this path, where if we do this, our middle school infrastructure could be set for the next 10 to 15 years. And so if we see growth, and those are getting to full utilization, then we can maybe explore another middle school to be built. But for now, like the way I'm looking at this, it's like this is the next 10 to 15-year investment, so that we don't need to go beyond spending more than we need to. And so, yes, I get that the tax tolerance in May is limited, and people have concerns. But you got to give people the choice to say, hey, do you want to spend it or not? And as a board member, this is what the district is requesting. I see the data, the incoming class is coming, it's going to get packed, and it's one of those where when you realize it's packed, it's going to be too late to make a change. It's too late to fix it, because you don't have any additional capacity. It's going to take 2 to 3 years for that to get fixed. And so we run 2 to 3 more years running hot in those middle schools like we're running in Highview. We're lucky with elementary school in Highview that we can make boundary changes because we have capacity in other elementary schools. We only have 3 middle schools. So either you run hot for the next 2 years and you take that chance, or you let the community decide, do you want to spend money so that we have an infrastructure for the next 10 to 15 years of middle school, or you do not? And if they don't, well, then it's their choice. Like, we're not spending $139 million with this vote.
Yeah.
We're giving our community the choice to decide if they want to move forward or not. So those are my thoughts.
Director Reichenberger?
Yeah, I want to kind of just point out, we're getting thrown a lot of new information tonight. The survey information we did not have before the meeting. The actual motion that we're voting on was not even provided in the agenda. It was the first time that we were actually to hear what was going to be a part of this motion was when Director Swanson, stated it when he made his motion. It's a lot. And from what I'm hearing from everybody, there's definitely some yeses out there, but there are also a lot of maybes. It's like there's nobody who's like a flat out no. But I think we're just kind of like working our way to kind of get to where we need to be. What I would like to see, like I said, we're absorbing a lot of information from the survey results tonight. We've been looking at the individual options for these expansions and what other items might be out there we might consider. What I would like to see is that, we as a board, whether informally or as a working group, try to hash out what we want to see, as part of the motion, is, what's going to be included in this or not. Talking this out and, saying, okay, this should be included, this should be included, this, we'll just categorically exclude this, we don't need this, and then, if we need to amend things, formally, that's perfectly fine. But we gotta have, I really don't like, the lack of foresight to just throw it out there in the middle of a meeting and then be voting on all of the information that was thrown at us an hour later. It doesn't show it doesn't show a really sound process. It sounds like you're pushing things through, and I don't like that. I don't think that's wise policy making.
Director Carbone?
Yeah, I'm not sure this is the first night we've heard about any of this. I want to be really clear and fair. We've gotten presentations about facilities and about the metrics that are coming as a wave of humanity is going to hit here in a couple of years or whenever it is. And I also keep hearing about, we've got a lot of data that was given to us today in this survey. And I still believe, and I said this earlier, but I still believe it, if there was a communication strategy, that those numbers would be different. And even without a communication strategy, when you look at the slide that said, what do you support, public? 64 to 76%, facility, safety, and furniture. Okay, it was right up there. And then when you ask, do you want to spend $139 million, 56% of them agreed or strongly agreed. And then you had an 11% unsure. So if with a communication strategy, you could get even half of the 11%, now you're over 60% according to the survey, that would agree or strongly agree to a $139 million package for a facility improvement.
Yeah, Tony, I do want to clarify one of the comments or just respond to something. So, you know, the motion is, it's facilities bonding approval, so what are we going to approve for bonding? As I said when I started out here, I'm starting at what I believe is essentially what the district said are the needs of the district, you know, not necessarily the wants. And if people want to, once we establish, hey, there's a base for the need, and want to add some of the additional items that we've discussed over the past month on top of that, we can do that. But my understanding from our discussions and per the district's recommendation is we need space for our middle schools. You know, I mean, that is an issue. I mean, two things can be true at once. We might need additional resources for the teachers as well. But that's not in front of us. There's not a proposal on that. So the district hasn't provided one. So while we can continue to ask for one, that's not going to be up for a vote in May. And this is what we have as an opportunity to put in front of the public. And if we don't, then we don't have a chance to get it approved. So, yeah.
He was
Director
first,
Johnson.
sorry.
Yeah, I'd like to amend the motion and add the furniture budget, or the furniture proposal to the ask.
I second that.
All right, there being a first and a second, any discussion on the amendment to the motion?
I think it's important to have,
all the items that are currently within the motion.
Yes, so it would be every item on the, do you have the list? I don't know if you can see this. There are a lot of items. I mean, I could go,
I think we should
It's
go
the whole
line by
plan,
line.
right?
it's
Yeah.
the whole plan, option 2 on the middle school expansions minus the 4 additional tennis courts at Kenwood. So it's
Can we have it up on the screen or
it's
something?
$138,900,000, roughly. I mean, it's in the packet that was provided. I think it was provided this past week. So you have the.
Okay.
Do you have that?
Yes.
I'm working on it.
so I'm in favor of the furniture, because if we're gonna make this kind of investment in building infrastructure, and in my mind, I'm envisioning that it is something that would be, again, set our district to scale for growth for the next 10 to 15 years. It probably makes sense to make sure we've got the right furniture for the next 10 to 15 years. So
All right.
that's my recommendation.
All right, there's a second. Any discussion on that
I'm
amendment?
still pulling up the.
I have.
Yeah.
The reason I seconded that is because I feel like of the whole plan, that is where I saw the most information about how teaching and learning could really utilize new furniture to improve instruction practices in our schools. And so for our community and for the board, you know, it's not just to have a pretty couch, but I think it really shows forethought into how students learn and how small groups can be facilitated within a classroom, if you have the right infrastructure within a room. I know this is not part of the motion, but I'd just like to express that, I think equity amongst the schools is important, and if tennis courts are the only thing that we're not making equitable, it seems like I would be interested in entertaining a conversation about that after we vote on this motion.
Any more discussion?
Where is it in the board packet? Because I'm not seeing it.
Is that in the board packet? It was in the last week's board packet.
I think, superintendent emailed it to everybody this week too with some little notes on it.
Point of information? Can you amend an amended motion? Yes?
You amend your amendment to the motion?
Yes. Sure.
Do you want to withdraw your motion?
No.
I don't see it in that one either.
Withdraw your amendment and then read.
So there's
Oh.
technically no amendment to your motion yet.
Got it. I can withdraw
So
and then make a new
it's-
one.
It's up for a vote right
Okay.
now.
Got it.
If that's
Did
helpful.
did
But
you all,
can- but
did
can
you
I
all find the
withdraw and make a new
PowerPoint?
one?
What's that?
Can I withdraw and make a new one?
Well,
No.
there's been a second and it's up for discussion.
Got it.
There was
Thank
an
you.
email sent
You
today,
can-
sorry, at 2:16 that has that list that you're talking about.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
yes.
On 2/6. Okay.
Because Director Cameron, I think you are right. I mean, it's,
Capacity.
One thing at a
Here.
time, one thing at a time.
okay.
One thing I want to say about all of this is that ideally we have every board member voting together on this. So with where we are, it feels very uncomfortable, and I want to commit to us not being in this place again going forward. So for me, this is, it's a failed process in my mind. We need to do better.
I would agree with that. Typically when the board comes to the table and we've had discussions about this, we've hashed it out during working sessions or whatever, and when we come to the table, we're pretty much all on the same page, and I feel like we are all over the place. I do feel like after having that survey data, like it would be nice to hold a working session with the board and go through all the things based on the data that we got from that survey, because furniture was one of the things that was on there. What were other things that were on there? What are some things that we can help put in the proposal to build community support for it? Like I just don't think we've had time to really talk through as a board.
Yeah, again, I don't know, I mean, we've had a number of meetings, I think at the last meeting we even asked, like, I'm just ready to move forward on this, is there any more information you need outside of the survey? I don't know if the survey was surprising in any way, but in any event, I wanna call, if there's no further discussion on the amendment to the motion.
Wait, did you withdraw it? No.
No, I did not.
You didn't amend it.
No. I guess I'm not allowed to amend. my
You can
own-
withdraw and restate
Oh, can I
it.
withdraw and make
Sure.
a new one? All right, let's do that.
What's your?
I withdraw and would like to amend my motion to say, to include the furniture and the Kenwood tennis courts, so the entire package that is proposed by the district.
So you're,
You're just withdrawing your amendment,
Oh,
right?
yes.
Oh.
No,
she's making an amendment to
a
the
new one,
withdrew his amendment and made a new amendment.
yes. Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second by Director Cameron, which essentially brings us up to the $139.6 million total. That is the option two,
So we're essentially approving option 2, correct?
we're
So it's
essentially
like
approving option
Option
two
two,
with
yeah.
all the items.
I think, yeah.
Any discussion on that?
I think option 2 makes sense versus option 1. If you're gonna do it, you might as well do
So
option 2.
we're voting on the amendment only at this point.
Agreed.
All right.
I'm sorry,
Oh,
I'm sorry,
hold on
I'm
a
sorry,
second.
I'm sorry.
Any discussion
Point.
on the amendment, whether we're amending the original vote?
I'm sorry.
So we're not voting on the actual decision?
We're voting on the
Whether
tennis
we're
courts and
amending-
the
I
furniture.
want to make sure, a point of clarification,
Mhm.
I need to understand what I'm voting for. I just want to make sure. So I'm not voting for option 2, I'm voting for Brian's amendment,
Which is option 2.
which is option 2.
It's adding in every item of option 2.
Correct.
Mhm.
So we are voting for Brian's amendment,
No.
which is option 2.
We're voting to amend the original motion to Brian's motion, and then we'll vote on that motion.
Okay.
But it all rolls into.
Yeah, we get to the same place. All right, thank you. That's what I need to understand. All right, thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion on that, or? Ms. Elson?
Kim Baker,
No.
Brian Johnson,
Yes.
Amber Cameron,
Yes.
Matt Swenson,
Yes.
Carly Anderson,
Yes.
Paul Carbone,
Yes?
Tony Reichenberger,
Yes.
All right, the amendment to the original motion passes, so now we're on the amended motion, which is to approve, authorizing the district to prepare the review and comment, for the Minnesota Department of Education for the improvements as set forth in the option 2 plan, in total amount of $139.6 million to improve Kenwood, Century, and McGuire Middle School.
Can I clarify something?
Yes.
So we're voting on option 2 that includes adding tennis courts when sports were at the bottom of what the community wanted, and we don't have any teaching and learning supports. Right? That's essentially what we're doing now. So we're putting tennis courts above
This is
learning.
an
Well, this
infrastructure
is, again,
bill,
Yeah.
not a staffing bill.
I get that, but you're taking our tax tolerance and you're putting it towards tennis courts. That's where I said, like, I feel like as a board, we should go through these line items and say yes or no to see where we're all at, because,
That's kind of what we're doing right now.
oh,
Right.
well, no, we're voting on one proposal.
Well, the board just approved adding in the tennis courts, which was one proposal, and the furniture, which is, yeah. Right, so Director Baker.
Director Baker, I appreciate like how you're feeling and what you're bringing up. For me, and I believe this was said at a previous meeting, that the tennis courts are used a lot for curricular purposes. So like gym classes and, during the school day for a space for student, learning. And so I hear what you're saying about how the community wants to support sports facilities and not as interested in that, right?
Yeah.
I see this a little bit differently because of that, and also, I mean, I do believe that each school should more or less have the same, like, the same opportunities, the same curriculum. So like if you're doing physical education at Century or McGuire and you're using the tennis courts for pickleball or tennis or whatever else, I'm not.
So can I clarify what this is? Because on the proposal, it says that this isn't adding tennis courts, it's just relocating the current tennis courts.
That's for Century.
That's for Century.
And I think at Kenwood, it's like, they have tennis courts, right now that are in bad shape. And so it's just getting them up to snuff.
And I think they were adding
Do
some.
we have to add?
Oh, and adding 2 courts.
I mean, I stated last week, I'd be fine pulling some of these out for question number 2. But that isn't the issue right now, so.
I didn't even see them on here.
So, are you on the Kenwood Trail slide?
Yeah, there it is.
It's the second from the bottom. Site edition.
So as I'm reading this, the Kenwood modifications would include a gymnasium storm shelter to accommodate the increased growth, new gymnasium circulation, locker rooms, existing gymnasiums, expansion of the cafeteria to accommodate the additional growth that would come in, kitchen, servery, parking expansion, stormwater management, again, expanded tennis courts, building-wide furniture. Those are
DCE renovation too.
yes. And these are operational infrastructure things to accommodate future growth for the incoming middle school class students. When I look at McGuire, they're looking at 2 team classroom additions, increased class sizes, add flex, making adjustments to the kitchen and servery expansion to accommodate additional students, cafeteria expansion, multi-purpose band, choir, metal shop and circulation. I guess they don't have, I thought they had a metal shop, but maybe they don't. Locker room, infrastructure, storm shelter, physical ed storage to circulation, extended parking, building-wide furniture. And then when we look at the option 2 version of Century Middle School, the list includes 3 team classroom additions, increasing the gymnasium, new entry lobby, lockers, expanding the kitchen, expanding the cafeteria, multi-purpose band, choir, and then that's generally the list.
What's the monthly dollar amount that will be added to someone's tax?
So my understanding, and Bill, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that this is within the $18 a month tax tolerance.
You know, we actually got updated information from others today, and that amount would actually be quoted.
Again, information that would have been nice to have prior.
I don't disagree with you. I'm frustrated about that, yes.
But now we know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, but when you're trying to have these conversations, it's not something I take lightly when I know that that's how the community feels, that they're overtaxed, that there are people that cannot afford their grocery bills, that we're doing all these things. It's not an easy decision. I went back and forth on this decision for weeks on what is right, because I take this very seriously. It's not a decision I take lightly. Like, the community has trusted us with these funds, and we have to do our due diligence to make sure that what we're promoting and what we're providing is not only like what's best for all of our students, but also what fits within what we need, not what we want, like what we really need. I just think that that's a heavy burden that we bear, and if you don't feel that weight, like, I don't know how you don't, because like I said, I've lost sleep over it.
All right.
If this were to pass tonight, I would like to see regular, and we can figure out what that means, or at least a significant presentation about what is our communication strategy, and who are we using externally to help move the community understanding of the need for this.
Plus a plan with how we're going to address the fact that teachers are going to be teaching multiple grade levels.
Yeah, and a teaching and learning plan that complements the sections built, yes.
And I just want to make sure that everybody knows, like, you don't have to say yes. No one's forcing your arm to say yes. Here, you've got we've gotten the information from the district over the past month or so, and if you don't feel that you have enough information, it's okay to say no. Like, that's
I don't
your
feel like
role.
that though, because if
So-
we're not united as a board, the community's not going to buy into it either. So no, I don't feel that way. I feel like with whatever the majority is gonna go with, I'm gonna go with, because I want us to make a board decision and be united in that.
That's how I
I
feel
wanna
too.
give I wanna give it as much of a chance to pass as I can. So no, I don't feel that way.
And for me, I mean, you could say I needed more information at times. I think my bigger question is like, is this the right strategy, given our community and all the needs? And this is one proposal that we've considered, right? And we know there's all these other needs, and so my comments are more about, I wanna see bigger picture strategy, not reaction strategy. And that's what I feel like this is, and I'm not negating the fact that we need the space, we do.
Fair.
I think many of us are in that boat of.
So let's play this out. We choose not to make a decision today, which is fine, and we just vote no. When would be the appropriate time to bring this matter back up? And then, and will that jeopardize our student experiences in middle school? So when would be the next, when would you want to, like when would be an appropriate time to make this call? Because if we missed the deadline, I think the deadline is it next week?
Mm-hmm.
When's the next deadline? Can we not do any levy at all next year? Is that the rule? Because I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for 2028 open on the expansion, it's just, we just miss it, then you're looking at the next year, right?
So if we wait a
2020.
year,
Yeah,
if we don't make a decision by next Friday, we can't we can't bring it out to the public for a full year. Is that?
yeah. I mean, I
We can
think
go in
you can-
November,
Or we can go in November.
November.
What's
That,
that? You could go in November.
We could go in November and do 2 levies.
Well,
What?
which then gets you back to the same position.
Well,
How likely are you,
Right.
as a public?
And the reason I say 2 levies is that we've been talking about an operating levy potentially with, there's additional staffing gaps that we have across the industry, across our district. So over the next 3 to 6 months, if we talk about things that we can use to close gaps with the remaining tax capacity we have available, that would be 2 levies, an operating levy and a bond levy. So,
well, and I think my concern too is that we have significant needs. We have our pathways in a basement, and that was never supposed to be a long-term solution. And when is that gonna come back into the fold? Because we're already talking about how we need an operating levy. That would probably involve a build or something separate that we haven't discussed. And when is that gonna come back around? And how are we then, again, failing our pathway students?
Well, that will come back around immediately because we're working all of those right now. Sequentially, if we wait till November, we will not have space to start the school year of '28.
We
And
don't have space to
that's
start
been known
27.
since April of '24.
Very true.
I'm
Well,
sorry?
We gotta
We don't
move.
have space to start 27.
Yeah, but does that justify pushing it up another year?
I just
Yeah.
mean, that's not the reason to not, like, that's where I
Okay.
don't feel like the strategic vision is thinking about all those things.
Well, we actually are. What we're trying to do is make up for lost time. I went through Dr. Van Zyle's presentation of April of '24, which some of these things that we're talking about right now were in that presentation.
Right.
But that didn't happen for whatever the reasons are. So I'm trying to deal with what's the immediate, simple solution to optimize our flexibility and capability into the longer strategy that I think everybody wants and deserves. But getting there, first things first, and the first thing that I think we have to do is create the space. The teaching and learning process and program, we've done a reset there. That's got to take the time to develop, and we're doing a lot of work there. But I'm just trying to buy us a little bit of time here and be judicious about what our student needs and what our faculty needs are going to be. And as the students come into the district, because we've tried to show what the numbers look like out to 2030 and beyond, it's a really ugly problem. I fully understand that, and I empathize with everybody's frustrations with this. The challenge is really about the timing that we're in, and I have chosen to confront that, and I know it's very uncomfortable, but if we don't, then we're gonna have to come up with alternative plans that are still not gonna get at the core issues, which are the teaching and learning issues, which I think everybody has
Right.
correctly and properly brought up. And everybody deserves more information about that. And I think it's a yes and. I think we can do this, create the space and the flexibility, and whether you're doing a model that we have in the middle school that is teaming, or something else that your teaching and learning would want to do, we'll have the space to fit that. That's with option 2.
Yeah.
And it also projects long-term what our fill is going to be in the 3 facilities. So I've tried to lay that out. I know that there's been a lot of talk about another building. The challenges there are, I think, financially greater and don't align with what my sensing was, and I think this survey validated, that our community wants to do as needed. And this is a need, for sure, this is a need. And I don't know any other way to say it. I agree with everything that's been said at this table, but I also know that if you look at it from a timing perspective, this is where we're at, and this is a solution that can continue to set the conditions for all the other things that I humbly and 100% agree with. And I have to deliver on that. But it's gonna be exponentially more difficult if we don't have the space. That's.
We can just do one expansion in one middle school. We don't have to do all three. I mean,
Right.
as a Band-Aid. I mean,
Director Baker.
So I just want to say thank you for all of that. I appreciate that acknowledgement of the frustration and the difficulty of this decision. And I also want to think about those survey results and what the community said they needed. As we're thinking about if we're going to move forward with this, I really feel it needs to be a 2-question ask. So then I think we should be very thoughtful on what that second question is, knowing that the community needs some sort of a leeway for what's coming next. So maybe our second question has something to do with high school expansion or something like that. It's on there, they know it's coming, it'll probably get voted down, but then at least we've put them on notice and started that information and that conversation for what's coming down the road. I just think we need to be mindful on how we do that too, because there's more to this than just approving the bond and moving forward. It's how do we craft those questions to help tell our story and to put some control in the voter's hand with also giving them the information.
So to that point, how much information do we have to have in order to have a second question? Like,
We would need
do we
to
have to know
know,
specifics as
well, you
far
have to
as
do a
the-
review and comment on anything that you're going to
Correct.
build,
So we don't
and
have
you
that
have to
next
have the
meeting.
design and the dollar figures associated with that. So, you know, that's what, I mean, we've itemized the list here.
Right.
And we would have to figure those details out, but they have to be in review and comment that go to the Minnesota Department of Education
So if
first.
we're beyond the list we have right now, then that's probably not doable in the next week. But
I
Yeah,
can't
pathways.
see, I wouldn't see how you could, just to answer that question.
okay, Director Kramer.
I appreciate what you're saying, Director Baker, and wanting to like help the community understand like the next phases that will come down the pike. I don't know if I'm in agreement with using a ballot question to help educate at this time, at least.
I get that.
I think looking at a long-term communication strategy is critical. And so that's what I would want to see is like as we start planning these next phases, that it starts now. Communicating with families, parents, community about what is needed. But I don't know if
I don't think a single question is going to go over well. I think we should have 2.
Mm.
And I think we're gonna have to really figure out what that second question is going to be.
I call the question.
Have we used, I just had a question for Superintendent Baumann, have we used a second ballot question before as a
I
means
believe,
to educate?
yeah, I'd have to go back and look at when we did that. I want to say it was either 2017 or 2019, somewhere in there.
Okay.
So we have done it, yes.
Do you feel like it worked well as a strategy?
It worked that time.
Did it pass?
I
Oh, it just passed. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, the second question passed too?
Yeah, I think it was both. Now, I think while I was away, did you guys not do a 2-question and one passed and one failed?
One passed and one
So
failed.
It's kind of a mixed
Yeah.
bag there.
Yeah.
That one was tricky though, because it was like increasing the per pupil funding. And, you know, you voted yes for the first, which I forget how much money, let's say $100, it was more than that. But then the next one was like, do you want to do another 100? And they're like, well, I already gave some, you know.
But
so
you
it's
could
like-
also put it like, the first question is the middle school expansion, and the second question is the early childhood center. You could also do something like that, because that was on the survey results too. People were concerned about early childhood, so.
Well, there
It's
was
there.
also favorable, people in favor of ALC education.
There were, yeah,
So
I was really
that's-
excited to see that.
That's where I think like part of this is, when I'm thinking about strategy here, I think that's what I was more looking for, is when we're thinking about going out for a bond, what are the biggest needs that we can bundle? And I know we're not there, but that's what, I mean, we're not there tonight. But now I just feel like, I mean, talk about incompetency, we're failing our ALC, or our pathways at this point.
So,
We
And,
really are.
and so
do you feel like we have a plan for that already in front of us that we can
I
put
feel
as a
like
second question?
my worry is that if we go out for a bond in the spring, and next we have to, everybody knows we have to have an operating levy of some sort, and then we're gonna go for another bond or something else. I mean, that, and then, like, this is where my concern gets to that 33 to 35, or 2033 to 2035, where we are not gonna be able to go for anything.
Because we've reached our limit.
Because we have, well, not
Well,
limit,
it's on
we
the
have
operating side.
all the other levies coming up for renewal. And so, and it's big dollar levies. So there's no way we're gonna pass anything else in that time period. So we're gonna crunch all of this into the next, that means
So-
we're going out every year for
Well,
something.
We're just talking about question one here. I mean, if we want to discuss the question two, we can. But how about we get our vote on this, if that's okay with everyone? And
But I mean,
then we can
that's-
discuss additional items. So I mean, by the end of next week, you know, we have to figure out what's all gonna be on the ballot, right? So, but we're first gonna try to figure out if we have one thing on the ballot, so.
And that's where I would like to see, like, the expansions with, like, if we can get people behind the expansions, it might be strategic to bundle that with.
All right, well, let's see if people are behind the expansions first. All right. Selson?
Carly Anderson,
Yes.
Tony
Wait,
Reichenberger.
can we just restate the motion?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Voting on
Yeah.
option two.
The motion is pursuant to Minnesota statutes 123B.71 for the school board for District 194 to authorize the administration to prepare and submit to the Minnesota Department of Education the required review and comment for the following facility improvements, which are the $139.6 million improvements to Kenwood Trail, Century, and New Garden Middle School facilities, as outlined as option 2 in the school board proposal dated November 11th, 2025.
That includes the furniture and tennis courts.
Does.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Sorry.
Tony Reichenberger,
I'm sorry, are we voting already?
We are.
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
Brian Thompson,
Yes.
Amber Cameron,
Yes,
Matt Swanson,
Yes.
Kim Baker,
Yes.
Paul Carbone.
Yes.
Fine.
Carly Anderson?
I was first.
Oh, okay. All right. So that's taken care of. Any additional items people want to discuss from the list? Or the proposals?
I don't think some of them are, like, I think my concern was some of the things that maybe are considered later, seem more urgent. I don't know how well planned that would be at this point. Like, we've thrown out ideas about doing like something on that plot of land by Lakeville South to be like a career combination with pathways, you know, like,
Career Pathways Academy,
yeah.
Yeah,
And I think that would be great,
I think it would be too.
but that's where I don't feel like
There's
the
just no plan for it right
administration,
now, right?
but that's my concern.
But we've asked
is-
about that like several times. Yeah.
I guess my concern is like, if we're going out for bond, do we go a little bit bigger so that we can address multiple priorities?
Director
and
Cameron?
I think that's my I don't think it's a second question. I think
It's one.
you bundle this.
Yeah.
You can get the community behind, let's say, the middle school expansions. And the question would also include
Right.
some other high priority need of the district.
Right.
It's not, you're not pitting one against the other
Yes.
or a sequencing of them.
Are there other priorities that you have in mind that you'd like to consider?
Pathways.
What?
Pathways.
When you mean pathways, what does that mean? A new building or a new location, or what does that mean to you?
To me, I think it's, I've never seen it as a program that's just in a building by itself. I think is encompassed within like a career and technical center where they have access to, and then both high schools have access to learning, bringing back like some of those, career and tech things that our students want access to right now.
So you want a tech center?
I do, yeah. I think
Very
it's in there, and then I also see that being, having a gymnasium on it, so that they have access to that, because they've never had access to that. They can take care of some of our gym issues with community ed.
So when do we, if we bundled this, that has to be decided today, or that has to be decided by next week? So can we,
I just don't know that we can get a plan for a tech center. And I just, again, if you're moving from needs to wants,
I don't see it as
I
a
don't
want.
see that as
tech,
one
a
thing.
tech center? I mean, you could make an argument on the pathways side, sure. I just don't know that we have, and maybe Amber can speak to this too, because, I mean, we went through there last week. I just don't know that the vision we have right now that's been presented to us for the future pathways is necessarily the consensus of, you know,
I'd
What
commit
is
to making
desired?
sure that it's a top priority in the next iteration of things that we need to do, but
But then I also know that that has been the discussion on pathways for the past 15 years.
Right.
And it's continually been moved down. Because every time then they say, well, there's a bigger need, and it impacts more student population. And it just gets moved down. When during budget cuts, like, they literally lost their building.
I see it as more like a challenge of like like Amber mentioned earlier, I mentioned this too, like how do we bundle this together to get a vote in favor of that collectively? I think it's gonna be a lot harder for us to get a vote for that in isolation. And then
Correct.
we can keep kicking the can.
But
And
there are also
it's not-
issues that we have at both of our high schools that a career center could address, given the fact that we have one high school that has a great wood shop and one high school that has great welding, but the kids don't, I mean, and then the times don't correspond, so it's hard for kids to go to different places. But if we had one central location that's career pathways where they can get maybe their CNA license before they graduate, we could also bring back some of those PSEO students that are doing some of those things outside of our campuses anyway, which would bring dollars back to the district.
I think I'd like to see pathways integrated in this future state model that T&L might be putting together. That
Right.
would say, do you want a tech center? What does it include? Does pathways fit in there? Does community ed fit in there? And that might, again, unfortunately, probably won't happen within a week, but I would want to ensure that that is part of the next proposal for whatever the district needs to do.
I know,
Director
it's
Cameron?
just that I've been asking about it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think figuring out a good solution for the ALC is like one of the highest priorities, for the district. I've been told that the ALC plan that was presented to us a couple meetings ago now was not vetted by staff and the principal. I've heard it from the principal and staff directly. And so I wanna see a plan that is, where the stakeholders involved are consulted before it comes to the board. But I don't think I'm ready to like vote for a tech center for like in the next week, in the sense that like you, Director Thompson, I think if there is a tech center, I wanna understand how the two high schools interact with that in terms of moving kids around even, like how does a teacher learning plan foster opportunity for all kids if something like that is to be developed? And I realize that will take some time to figure out. But I also think that is one option for the ALC. But I also think in our conversations that Matt and I had, there might be some other options too that the principal there has thought about with like other commercial real estate options that would be way less money than what we've been talking about, and would be a great fit for the ALC. So, you know,
I'd love to hear about
I'm
that.
with you. I think this is a in the top 5 priorities, top 3 for the district. I don't think we're ready to put it on the ballot for May.
It does feel that we are reactive and 100% in alignment with you guys on that one, because we should be thinking 9 to 12 months out. So right now, we should be thinking about the things that we want to implement within our schools in September. But we've got polling to decide next week. We've got boundary changes that probably need to be decided by end of December, if not early January. Is that true?
No,
February.
January, February.
January, February? All right, so there are some other hot items that we've got to resolve fairly quickly so that we can get ahead and do other things, but don't want to discredit or, say, hey, like, those are important things, but we also have other things that are unfortunately right in front of us that we've got to tackle. So,
I just want to say that that's right in front of us too.
yes.
Yeah, I'm with Amber on this one. I just would love to see, and I know we've asked teaching and learning, and I think the timeframe's probably end of the school year, when we kind of see their vision, and recommendation, and then I assume we'd have something from, pathways too. So, but again, I don't think what we have in front of us or presented to us is really the ideal option right now, and we don't have a tech center, as much as I think it'd be really cool to have one.
I fully agree that we can't put this together next week, but this is more my, where I've been struggling so much. And I know it's all over my face and it's all over my voice, and I'm sorry, I'm struggling in this meeting a lot.
Yep.
Where, how could we have packaged this in a way? And
Is it a missed
we are not,
opportunity?
yes, that's where it
Sure.
feels like I feel like the community is pretty easily gonna get behind the middle schools. It is gonna be harder still to get behind some of these other things that we may have to build for. And so, yeah,
It's definitely a missed opportunity.
but we are where we are.
Move to adjourn?
I'll second it.
Ms. Austin?
Counselor Vaughn,
Oh, yes.
Tony Reichenberger,
Yes.
Amber
Yeah,
Cameron,
yes.
Lance Swanson,
Yes.
Kim Baker,
Yes.
Brenda Thompson,
Yes.
Fine.
Carly Anderson.
Yes.
We are adjourned.
I was thinking about it.
Oh, let's stay
I was
until
thinking
midnight.
about it.
Yeah, Amber, that's teaching and learning. Do that. And so, one of the things that was very disappointing is the previous directors